Okay, so let's talk about engine trim. Now, this won't really matter if you're on an outboard, a stern drive, or twin engines if you're on a stern drive, twin engine, or outboard stern drive. If you have a jet drive, if you have an inboard, a V drive, then you won't have the ability to use engine trim. We're not talking about the trim tabs. We're talking strictly engine trim and trimming the motor. What the engine trim does is it's actually going to give you a different angle of the boat. So if we look at a boat, when you start with your engine trim, you want it in the all the way down position, which is...
Hey, it's Captain Matt. I'm interrupting this video. This is part of our Best Boat Captain series. It's a training course I put together for newer boaters that struggle with boat handling, with docking. They get really stressed when they're around the dock and tying the boat up, and they struggle in those areas. This trim video is just an extra bonus. I shoot most of my videos in the 4-camera setting so you can see all of the different angles. It's super helpful in the docking segments, especially the 9 building blocks. It's a way that I teach how your boat handles so that you can have total control. So if you're interested in that, you can go to bestboatcaptain.com and check it out. No more docking stress, no more struggle. Get total control of your boat. Check that out. Now we'll get back to the video on how to trim your boat properly.
Right here on the switch, and just push that all the way down. What that's going to do is it is going to allow your boat to get up on top of the water as quickly and efficiently as possible. It's the most efficient angle to have your drive, whether that's the whole outboard or just the stern drive that's in the water. Now, once you get going, what that's going to do is it's going to give you a bow down attitude, or a bow level attitude is probably more accurate. The way the boat's designed on the bottom, pontoons, fiberglass boats, aluminum boats, the way they're designed is to get up on top of the water. If you have lifting strakes especially, they work really well in combination with the engine trim. And the lifting strakes are just a built-in design on fiberglass, most aluminum boats, and even some pontoons that are going to have higher performance. So you're going to start all the way down, and then what you're going to do is you're going to trim that motor up, which is actually tilting it this way. And outboard, you're going to be able to see it move. And stern drive or an IO, you're not going to see it move, but you're going to feel it. Now, you will have a gauge. The gauge is really irrelevant. It'll tell you whether you're engaging the trim or not and it's moving, but it's not a setting where you set it on a particular setting on your gauge, because if I have more fuel in the boat, if I have more weight in the bow, more weight in the back, if I'm traveling into the wind, if I'm going at different throttle settings, if I have more or less fuel, all of those things are going to actually impact the way your boat trims. But what we're looking for is we're looking for a very efficient fuel setting. And I'm going to teach you how to do that based on the feel of your boat, because your boat's going to trim different than this boat. And every boat that you run is going to trim a little bit different. But if you understand the principles of how trim works and what to look for, you're going to be able to jump on any boat and you're going to be able to get the sense, okay? So, trim. More trim is going to give you more bow rise. All the way down is going to have you a level attitude. Here's what we're looking for, is too much trim. Too much trim, we've got too much bow high, we've got too much angle on that lower unit. And what's going to happen is it's something called porpoising. You'll feel your boat, even on fairly smooth water, you'll feel that bow get really light, and it'll start kind of doing a dolphin, that porpoising action where it's just kind of bumping up and down. That's a little bit too far. When you're working with trim, you're going to just tap, tap, tap. That's going to be the best way. You don't want to just hold it. You're going to always go too far, and you're going to be chasing the right setting. So when you do it, it's just tap, tap, tap. Some boats, 1 or 2 taps is going to be all the boat can handle, especially if all your weight's in the back. On some boats, it's going to be 7 or 8 or 10 taps. But if you do just those small movements, a little bit of trim is going to make a big difference on most boats. Down is going to make that trim go down. It's going to make it, this is how we want to start every time. So if I'm at idle, what I do is I always just give it a little click down, if you can hear that. You'll hear the sound difference on your boat when it's all the way down. I'll give you, if you can hear this. So that's going up, and then this is going down. And if you hear that go, that when you hear that kind of duller, more bassy sound, that's all the way down. That's the motor saying, hey, this is as far as we can go, and that's where you want to start. When you get going, once you get up on plane, now you can give it some trim. If you're going at really slow speeds, too much trim is going to make you fall off plane. So if you go too slow and you've got too much trim in, what's going to happen is that bow is going to rise up and you're going to fall off plane and you're going to start plowing water. So that's another, hey, we've gone too far. All right, so let's actually practice it so you can see what it looks like. All right, so we're getting started. We're going to check 360 around us. We're going to trim all the way down. We're going to go in gear and we're going to put the throttle down to get up on plane. So now we're up on plane, but we don't have any trim in the drive right now, which means that we're burning more fuel than necessary. But if you listen to your boat and you feel it, when I start giving it trim, you'll notice I'm just tapping. And you can start to feel that boat getting lighter, getting more up on top of the water, and getting better speed at the same throttle setting. Your speed generally picks up. Now, it's a really, really calm day, so I'm going to show you what too far looks like. So you can hear the engine it just doesn't quite sound as smooth. Even on this very smooth, we're starting to see that bow go up and down. That's just a little bit too far, so I'm going to give it a tap down. One more tap down, there they go. You feel that bow settled in, and if you're on the boat, you can actually feel it. So what I want you to do is I want you to just practice feeling that trim. Now, what we're going to do, we're at about the perfect setting, but if weight moves up front, the weight moves in back, then that's going to need to be adjusted. If I adjust the throttle setting and I give it more speed, I can get a little bit more trim and the boat's going to like it. Again, when I go too far, it's going to bounce. Now, we mentioned coming off plane, so you may forget, oh, I've got a lot of trim in it because I was going wide open throttle. I want to see how fast I could go. And now you come back, you just slowly come back on that throttle and you're cruising. And it feels like, oh, this is a normal RPM. But because I've got so much trim, you can see we're falling off plane. Now, if I trim it down, I can hold this speed without falling all the way off plane. But if I put more trim in it, see that bow go up? And now it's saying, whoa, I don't like this. And now we're coming off plane and making a huge wake. So that's how you use trim and how you get the feel for it. So we're going to go through it. And I want you to do this on your boat, because every condition is going to be a little bit different. But when you get that feel and the sound of your boat, you're going to be able to use trim. One, it's going to save you fuel. Two, it's going to give your passengers and yourself a more comfortable and smoother ride, because you don't have to, by getting up on plane, you actually are going to glance over those waves a little bit more. And it's going to give you a smoother, more comfortable ride. All right, so we're all the way down. We're going to take off. Adjust my trim a couple taps up. There we go, a little bit too far and coming down. Now, I don't need to make any adjustments to that trim unless I adjust my speed. If I speed up, I can give it some more trim. If I slow down, I might need to take some trim away. Adjust. Now, I've got a boat coming up here off my port bow. One thing that I like to do as you get more advanced, and it depending on the types of water that you're running on, if I'm going over a big lake, what I may do is I may give it a lot of extra trim just to give me a smoother run over that lake. So I'll show what I mean. We've got this ski boat coming down here. We're going to pass it port to port, red to red. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to trim it up a little bit extra. And as I go over those lakes, other than the anchor locker not being all the way shut, it gave me a nice smooth ride over those lakes. I barely even bounced. And after I'm through, I'm going to trim it back down. Now, what I would say is, before you start using the trim to hit rougher water, I want to make sure that you're really confident about being able to watch 360 around you and know what to look out for. I don't want you to focus solely on, I'm so focused on getting the trim adjusted to hit these wakes, but I miss other boaters around me. So save that until you're really comfortable running your boat. But it really can, when I'm down at the Lake of the Ozarks running a really rough lake, when I'm at the coast, if you're going down the intercoastal waterway and you hit some of those big cruisers, I'm on that trim a little bit more than when I'm just out on a nice calm day like today. But when you get comfortable using your trim, and it works the same for twin engines or for outboards or stern drives, just play with it, understand what's too far, boom, and understand what's not far enough. And it's almost the sound of your engine just working too hard. And when you get that right trim setting, the engine just kind of has a more harmonious hum to it. It goes from to and it just sounds like it's working easier. So that's trim. And I mentioned there's another setting on some trim buttons, and that's called the trailer button. So on this one, if you've got down, you've got up, and then if you push it even harder, it's got a secondary click. So up and click, and that's called the trailer mode. So the engine drive's doing the same thing. It's moving up and down, but the trim has a setting that's going to be from here to here. That's kind of the operational range when you're running. But when you need to put it on a trailer, if you're in really shallow water, you can hit that secondary spot and it'll go into trailer mode, which is what you need if you're pulling the boat out of the trailer. If you're at a sandbar and you're too shallow to leave it down, and then you will tilt it up in that trailer mode. Just always remember to put it back down before you start running. Running your boat with it in that trailered position at any speed at all is really tough on the gimbal bearing. You'll know when you're in that trailer position if you've gone too far, because you'll feel that water, hear that water, and see it kind of shooting up. That's way too far for any running at speed. But as you go down, it'll be normal. So that's the trim and the trailering.